The straits are supposed to be open, free of tolls, free of attack. That is a direct line from Secretary of State Marco Rubio about the Strait of Hormuz. It tells you almost everything you need to know about the real objective behind President Trump's latest strikes on Iran. The target was not one missile launcher. The target was Iran's ability to decide which ships move, which ships wait, and which ships are attacked. Today, I want to walk you through the maritime control campaign behind the 10th consecutive night of American strikes. We are using only what CENTCOM, Reuters, the Associated Press, the United States Energy Information Administration, Al Jazeera, Fox News, and Iran's own state media have actually confirmed. Stick around, because by the end, you will understand exactly why the United States attacked command centers far from the water, why 4 ship crossings may matter more than dozens of explosions, and why former Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall says the remaining Iranian threat is so difficult to suppress over time. There's a lot of loud talk online claiming Trump's latest strike was simply revenge for American troop deaths. Retaliation was clearly part of it. Trump publicly promised that Iran would pay many times over after American service members were killed. But CENTCOM's own target language was narrower and more revealing. The command said the strikes were designed to degrade Iran's ability to keep attacking commercial vessels flowing through Hormuz. That does not mean every target was a ship or a coastal gun. It means the target set was built around the network that gives Iran leverage over maritime traffic. So let us get into it, sourced step by step. Start with the scale of the waterway. The Strait of Hormuz is the narrow exit from the Persian Gulf into the Gulf of Oman. In the first quarter of 2025, about 20.4 million barrels per day of crude oil and petroleum liquids moved through it. By the first quarter of 2026, that figure had fallen to 14.6 million barrels per day. That is a decline of 5.8 million barrels every day. The 2026 total included 10.7 million barrels per day of crude oil and condensate. It also included 3.9 million barrels per day of refined petroleum products. Liquefied natural gas flows fell from 11.7 billion cubic feet per day in early 2025 to 7.3 billion in early 2026. World oil supply during that first quarter of 2026 averaged 95.4 million barrels per day. Even after the disruption, Hormuz was still carrying oil equal to more than 15% of world supply. That is why the United States can describe a radar site, a drone control station, or a group of small boats as a strategic threat. Those systems sit beside a corridor that influences fuel prices, shipping schedules, insurance premiums, and industrial costs across the world. By July 21st, Reuters reported that only 4 commodity vessels crossed the strait on Monday. 7 had crossed the previous day. 2 of Monday's vessels exited, 2 entered. There were no visible very large crude carriers. There were no visible liquefied natural gas tankers. A major energy artery was functioning at a fraction of normal confidence. CENTCOM offered a different measure of the campaign. It said that since early May, American forces had helped approximately 900 commercial vessels transit the corridor. It said those movements represented about 450 million barrels of crude oil. Those figures show that the United States is treating access to the strait as a sustained military mission, not an occasional escort problem. The human and military costs were also rising. By the weekend before the 10th night, total American troop deaths in the war had reached 17. The Pentagon said nearly 100 service members had been injured during the renewed fighting. It said 96% had returned to duty. Brent crude traded near $90 per barrel. Regular gasoline in the United States was averaging around $4 per gallon. Those figures created pressure on Trump from 3 directions at once. He faced military casualties, he faced disrupted shipping, and he faced a domestic energy cost that voters could see every time they filled a tank. The chronology begins with the wider war on February 28th. The United States and Israel launched large-scale attacks on Iran. Iran retaliated against Israel, regional states hosting American forces, and maritime targets. CENTCOM's own campaign assessments show that missiles, drones, naval systems, and the infrastructure linking them had been central targets from the opening phase. Those figures are American military assessments, rather than an independent audit. The next essential date was June 18th. The United States and Iran reached a memorandum intended to reduce hostilities and reopen Hormuz. The Energy Information Administration expected global production and trade to recover toward pre-war conditions. It forecast average American gasoline near $3.60 during the second half of 2026. The improvement did not hold. On July 7th, CENTCOM said Iran attacked 3 commercial vessels transiting Hormuz. The United States answered with what it called powerful strikes. Fox News reported CENTCOM's figure of more than 80 targets. The command said those strikes included air defense systems, command and control networks, coastal radars, anti-ship missile capabilities, and more than 60 IRGC small boats in and around the strait. That target list is the first clear blueprint for maritime control. Coastal radar finds and tracks a ship. Command networks classify it and send orders. Anti-ship missiles provide long-range striking power. Small boats can swarm, board, harass, or direct a vessel. Air defenses protect the system from American aircraft. The United States tried to attack every link at once. On July 13th, CENTCOM completed another wave against dozens of targets. The Defense Department said fighter aircraft, naval vessels, one-way attack aerial drones, and one-way attack sea drones were used. It was the first publicly announced American use of one-way attack sea drones in that phase of the campaign. Targets included Iranian air defenses, coastal radar sites, missile and drone capabilities, and small boats. CENTCOM's statement was unusually direct. It said Hormuz is an international corridor and Iran does not control it. Iran's position was the opposite. IRNA quoted Lieutenant Colonel Ebrahim Zolfaguri, a spokesman for the IRGC-affiliated Khatam al-Anbiya Command, saying security in the Persian Gulf and Sea of Oman must be for all or none. He said vessels belonging to enemy forces were not permitted to pass. He also said other ships could transit if they followed regulations imposed by Iran's armed forces. That is adversary media corroborating the central dispute. Washington says no state may dictate access to the international passage. Tehran says it has the right and capability to regulate movement near its waters. The war is therefore not only about stopping attacks. It is about whose rules captains believe they must obey. On July 14th, the United States reinstated a blockade against vessels moving to and from Iranian ports and coastal areas. The U.S. Navy-led Joint Maritime Information Center said non-Iran-bound and inspected humanitarian traffic could still move, while suspected blockade evaders risked boarding or disablement. That placed two competing control systems in the same narrow region. Iran asserted authority over Hormuz traffic. The United States asserted authority over access to Iranian ports. Commercial crews operated between both. On July 15th, CENTCOM announced another round designed to degrade systems used against commercial shipping. Fox reported that more than 20 U.S. Navy warships and hundreds of military aircraft were operating across the Middle East at that stage. The size of that force matters. Maritime control is not achieved by bombing alone. It requires surveillance aircraft, destroyers, tankers, electronic intelligence, search and rescue teams, mine countermeasures, command networks, and the ability to respond when a commercial vessel reports an attack. The strikes continued night after night. CENTCOM said the ninth consecutive evening targeted command centers, air defenses, coastal surveillance, maritime capabilities, missile and drone launch sites, and communications networks. That list again shows a systems approach. Communications are a maritime target when they connect a coastal sensor to a launcher. A command center is a maritime target when it assigns boats or missiles to a ship. An air defense site is a maritime target when it protects the coastal network. Then came Monday, July the 20th. CENTCOM began the 10th round at approximately 4 p.m. Eastern Time. The mission lasted about 5 hours. The command said it struck military command centers, maritime capabilities, missile and drone launch sites, and air defense systems. Iranian state media reported explosions around Shiraz, Bandar Abbas, Qeshm, Chabahar, Konarak, Khorramabad, and Abdanan. The precise damage at many of those locations was not independently verified, but the declared American purpose was explicit. Washington said it wanted to degrade Iran's ability to continue attacking commercial vessels moving through Hormuz. The situation at sea showed why. Reuters reported that 2 Dynacom-managed tankers were hit by projectiles of unknown origin off Oman on Monday. Another tanker reported being struck by an unknown projectile near the strait. Its crew abandoned the vessel and boarded a lifeboat. Iran's Revolutionary Guard separately claimed that 2 tankers caught fire after explosions while trying to use the southern route. Reuters could not immediately establish whether the incidents were the same. The attacks were real, but attribution and sequence remained disputed. Meanwhile, Iran attacked American-linked sites in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan. The United States struck Iran's south and west. Only 4 commodity ships crossed Hormuz on Monday. The tactical exchanges were expanding. The commercial corridor was shrinking. If you want the real story instead of whatever exaggerated headline is trending this week, subscribe and turn on notifications. I am going to keep tracking the shipping count, the coastal target list, and the condition of individual vessels. The next update may be the one where maritime traffic recovers, or where another successful attack proves that Iran's network still has enough reach to control commercial behavior. I want to be clear that this next part is my opinion, not reported fact. The United States did not need to occupy the coastline. It needed to make Iran's threat network unreliable. That network begins with detection. A coastal radar, drone, patrol boat, lookout, or intercepted commercial signal can identify a vessel. The next step is classification. Iranian operators decide whether the ship is neutral, compliant, hostile, connected to an enemy, or using a route Tehran rejects. The next step is command. Someone authorizes a warning, interception, boarding, or attack. The final step is the weapon. That may be a missile, drone, rocket, small boat, or another projectile. American target lists repeatedly touched every stage of that chain. Coastal surveillance affects detection. Command centers affect classification and authorization. Communications affect coordination. Missile and drone sites affect attack capacity. Small boats affect close control. Air defenses protect all of it. That is why a strike hundreds of miles from an actual tanker can still be part of a maritime control operation. The harder question is whether airstrikes can produce the behavior Washington wants. Christopher Preble of the Stimson Center told the Associated Press that Trump could keep bombing while Iran could keep the strait closed, or closed well enough. David Schenker said the United States struck 13,000 targets in the first 6 weeks without forcing Iran to take a knee. Frank Kendall said the easy targets were largely gone. He said mobile ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and small air vehicles are relatively easy to hide. That means the United States can destroy large amounts of equipment while Iran preserves enough residual capability to influence shipping. Maritime control is not a simple percentage. Iran only needs enough surviving capability to make ship owners hesitate. The United States needs enough surveillance, escort, interception, and retaliation to make transit look safer than waiting. The decisive battlefield is partly psychological. Companies study attack reports, insurers price war risk, and captains compare delay against danger. The side shaping those choices exercises practical control without legally owning the water. That is why the figure of 4 crossings is so important. 4 crossings do not prove Iran physically sealed the strait. They show that fear, uncertainty, and conflicting rules had already changed behavior. CENTCOM's figure of 900 facilitated transits and 450 million barrels shows the opposite effort. Washington wants to prove that ships can move under an American-backed security system. The two narratives are competing in the same statistics. My assessment is that Trump's latest strikes were designed to build a temporary corridor of reduced threat, not to achieve permanent dominance in one night. The United States was trying to suppress enough radars, launchers, boats, and command links to keep selected routes usable. That can work for hours or days. The challenge is maintaining it while Iran repairs equipment, relocates units, changes tactics, and launches retaliation against regional bases. This is closer to continuous air and maritime policing than a single decisive strike. Retired Brigadier General Rob Spaulding described the emerging approach as creating a pathway so the United States could control the strait. He compared the likely duration to the long-running American watch operations over Iraq. That comparison is not a confirmed policy, but it captures the operational reality. Keeping a corridor open may require repeated patrols and repeated strikes rather than one dramatic victory. Quick gut check. Drop a comment right now with just the single word "open" if you think the United States can restore dependable commercial passage through force. Or write "contested" if you think Iran can keep enough capability to control shipping behavior. I genuinely want to see where this audience lands before I share my own prediction later in this video. Now look at one ship. The multi-flagged tanker Kavamaleas was managed by the Greek company Dynacom Tankers. On July 20th, it was sailing off Oman near the Hormuz approaches. Vanguard reported the incident roughly 8 nautical miles northwest of Qumzar. Dynacom said 2 projectiles struck the vessel. A fire broke out in the engine room. The crew activated the onboard fire suppression system. The master then ordered a full evacuation. Omani authorities located every crew member and brought them safely ashore. No verified pollution was reported at that stage. The source of the projectiles had not been independently established. That single incident explains why maritime control is larger than sinking ships. The tanker did not need to sink. An engine room fire removed normal maneuvering and forced the crew into survival craft in contested water. Omani authorities had to coordinate rescue, while the company faced towing, salvage, insurance, cargo, and environmental questions. Other operators saw the report and adjusted their own risk calculations. Now connect Kavamaleas to the American target list. A coastal sensor may have detected the tanker. A command network may have classified its route. A launcher or mobile unit may have received targeting information. Small craft may have observed its movement. The public evidence does not identify the exact chain. It does not prove which Iranian installation, if any, supported the attack. It also does not establish who fired the projectiles. But it shows the operational problem CENTCOM says it is trying to solve. The United States cannot protect commercial movement only by shooting at a projectile after launch. It wants to disrupt the process before the weapon reaches the ship. That means striking radar, communications, command centers, missile sites, drone sites, and boats. The case also exposes the limit of the title. The real target was maritime control, but no 5-hour mission achieved full control. Kavamaleas was attacked. Another tanker's crew abandoned ship. Monday's crossings fell to 4. Those facts show the corridor remained contested after repeated American action. Right now, today, somewhere near Bandar Abbas, Keshem, Chabahar, or Kanarak, technicians are inspecting damaged radar equipment, power supplies, antennas, and communications links. Some are military personnel, Some are civilian workers supporting ports, roads, electricity, or telecommunications. They probably look toward the sky when an unfamiliar aircraft passes. Across the water in Oman, rescue crews monitor damaged vessels and prepare for another distress call. On merchant bridges, officers listen to VHF Channel 16. They compare American guidance with Iranian warnings. They watch radar contacts. They calculate distance to land, speed, engine condition, and the nearest safe anchorage. At CENTCOM facilities and aboard U.S. warships, crews review tracks, reload aircraft, and prepare for another mission. Families across the region wait for messages. None of those people decides the strategic contest. They live underneath it. A command center may be part of a maritime attack network while sitting near homes and public infrastructure. A commercial tanker carries cargo, but it also carries people working long shifts inside machinery spaces and on exposed decks. You can analyze the logic of maritime control without reducing those people to icons on a map. If you want deep dives like this, the moment new information actually gets confirmed, share this with one person who has been confused by the louder, less careful takes floating around. Here's the clean 5-point recap. First, CENTCOM's stated purpose was maritime. The 10th consecutive strike night lasted about 5 hours. The target list included command centers, maritime capabilities, missile and drone launch sites, and air defenses. The command said the objective was to degrade Iran's ability to attack commercial vessels moving through Hormuz. Second, the shipping data shows why the campaign matters. Only 4 commodity vessels crossed on Monday, down from 7 on Sunday. No visible VLCC or LNG tanker crossed. The Energy Information Administration estimated that Hormuz carried 14.6 million barrels per day in the first quarter of 2026, down from 20.4 million 1 year earlier. Third, the United States has been attacking an entire kill chain. Since July 7th, reported targets have included coastal radars, command networks, anti-ship missiles, drone launchers, air defenses, communication sites, maritime systems, and more than 60 IRGC small boats. Those systems collectively help Iran detect, classify, threaten, and attack ships. Fourth, Iran's own state media confirms that this is a control dispute. IRNA quoted Ibrahim Zulfikari saying security in the Persian Gulf and Sea of Oman must be for all or none. Iran says hostile vessels cannot pass unless they accept its rules. The United States says Hormuz is an international corridor that Iran does not control. Fifth, the title must be resolved honestly. The real strategic target of Trump's latest strikes was maritime control. That is supported by CENTCOM's own language and by the repeated focus on systems connected to attacks on shipping. What was not achieved was undisputed control of Hormuz. Iran still retained enough capability, or perceived capability, to frighten operators. Tankers were attacked, crews evacuated, traffic remained severely reduced. My prediction is that the United States can create temporary windows of safer passage by destroying sensors, launchers, boats, and command links. Dependable control will still require continuous presence, reliable intelligence, replenished interceptors, regional cooperation, and rules that commercial operators trust. Airstrikes can degrade the threat. They cannot remove every hidden launcher, drone team, small boat, or local commander. So look back at the word you chose. Open or contested? Did the evidence change your answer? Subscribe so you catch it the moment something actually changes.